Welcome everyone, it's the Gary Neville Podcast at the end of a truly dramatic day at the Emirates Stadium in North London. Manchester United have beaten Arsenal by 3-2. Arsenal's first home defeat of the season, only their second defeat at all in 30 odd games, and in dramatic style, Gary. I mean, what an afternoon's football.
Yeah, I mean, you like to think, come down this morning and you're in that car for 3 or 4 hours and you're imagining what type of game you're going to get, and that is not the game I thought we were going to get. It's not the result that I thought we were going to get either. I've been here a lot in the last year or two, and they're not a team that are easy to play against. It's always a struggle. Even Liverpool, when they played well a few weeks ago, it was 0-0. So to see a game that's ended up a little bit like a basketball game at times in the second half and it being 3-2, that really sets the cat amongst the pigeons a little bit. I think for both teams, I'm just thinking all these stewards that are around me up here with these Arsenal fans, just looking up at my shoulder. No, honestly, I think we should start with Arsenal. You're not going to win a league title and have it all your own way. It's not a bed of roses. It's never going to be a procession. You're not going to basically sort of be allowed just to sort of canter over the line at will. So they shouldn't be too down tonight, but that will rock them. If you were in that dressing room now, that will be a pretty low place. And Mikel Arteta, his coaching staff, will go home tonight and there'll be some searching. Right, come on, how do we pick this up? How do we reset? How do we get this right? What do we do tomorrow? Because that won't be easy, that one. Because there'll be a lot of people watching that football match. You just got a feeling before the game today, Peter, didn't you? This was a giant game that was going to be watched just because of what Manchester United did last week, the intrigue about could they repeat it and could they come again? Yeah, so I think that you're just thinking about what will be happening in that Arsenal dressing room. The fans will obviously be very down tonight. But there's a long way to go and they have to reset. They have to calm themselves. But they've not got a lot of experience in that dressing room of winning Premier League titles. And when you're winning your first one, it's the toughest. It's the toughest. For me, when I was obviously, I was helped enormously by the fact that there were experienced players that had gotten over the line. But if you think about when Manchester United won that first title, they lost it the year before to Leeds and then they won it. It's always bloody tough. And they're going to find it tough mentally. They're going to find it, you find it tough mentally, it means that you physically just feel it a little bit more as well. But they're going to have to get back on the bike. They've fallen over today. It's been a bad fall for them because they made some really big mistakes in that game. If we get to the technical part of the game, rather than thinking about the sort of the way in which the sort of world will present this tomorrow, it'll be that Arsenal are under pressure. I thought they played well in the first 20-25 minutes. They controlled the game, as you've seen Arsenal do so many times. They didn't let Manchester United out. All the game was down towards this end. But they weren't inventive enough. They didn't take enough risks. And they allowed Manchester United just to let it swing back. However, at the point where Manchester United just got a little bit of control, Arsenal scored a goal. Arsenal scored a goal at a point where Manchester United just started to play a little bit in that last 5 minutes. I think United had 70-odd% possession. But their reaction to scoring the goal was terrible. And there was a telling moment, I think, when Manchester United got their first real counter-attack, when I think Mbeumo goes through. He's got Gabriel and Saliba coming back at him, and he turns back and he plays it to Bruno Fernandes, and Bruno Fernandes just snatches at it and pulls it past the near post. And Mikel Arteta, you can see him right down beneath us here, because he's a feature when you're at Arsenal, because he's always so active. He's fuming that they've allowed Manchester United to have a chance, because they've given encouragement. And then there was another chance straight after that, and then the goal came. And it was self-inflicted pain by Arsenal. It really was in that 10-15 minutes before half-time. Because United at that point hadn't really got going. They didn't look dangerous. They didn't look like they got the connections going. Bruno Fernandes had given a couple of passes away. But the way in which Arsenal reacted to their own goal going in, I think gave United real encouragement. And from the very first minute of the second half, there were only one team that were actually dominant, and that was Manchester United. They were by far the better team in the second half. Michael Carrick's men went in with positivity. Mikel Arteta came out, I think, and realised that his team had gone under a little bit and they were nervous in that last 10 minutes of the first half. Where's that nervousness come from when they've scored that goal? Where's that anxiety come from? How has it surfaced in this match? It happened against Liverpool a couple of weeks ago, didn't it, here, where they had a warning sign. Liverpool just didn't have quite enough up front, if you remember. Liverpool had lots of players missing in that game and couldn't go and hurt them. But Manchester United, they've got Mbeumo, they've got Ahmad, they've got Bruno Fernandes, they've got Mount, they've got Šeško, they've got Dorgu. They've got players who are really capable of hurting you, and they've been hurt tonight, Arsenal. And then he threw the kitchen sink at it. But threw the kitchen sink at it in a way which was... He half threw the kitchen sink at it. Mourinho came on. Ben White came on. I actually wanted to see... Was Martinelli sub, by the way, or am I missing something? He was, wasn't he?
Yeah.
He was. I thought he was. I think everything... So I was thinking Martinelli, Madueke, Eze, Gyökeres, front four. Probably leave Zubimendi on with Rice and just change the front four. But that's taking Saka off. So, but anyway, I just thought he would get those 3 or 4 on, really, and put the spontaneity and the instinctive play out on the pitch. But he still sort of went a little bit he went for it, but didn't really go for it, if you know what I mean. And I don't think the substitutions helped Arsenal that much. It didn't add impetus to the game like I thought it would. And they didn't do enough. And other than set pieces and those corners, Arsenal were really, really struggling in open play to break Manchester United down. And I think tonight it'll take a little bit to pick themselves up.
So I don't know whether you experienced this. Obviously, you were in a team that was constantly chasing trophies, and lots of them. And Arsenal are chasing all 4 here, and they have been excellent week in, week out. And in a sense, there's no logic behind the anxiety, because you should trust them to win the games. But I speak as a football fan, you speak as a football player. And I know if I was an Arsenal fan, I would feel that anxiety, because it's been so long and it's so exciting and it's so possible. So how, as a player, do you surmount the anxiety, which is perfectly understandable amongst the supporters?
Look, I can understand it a little bit from the supporters in certain parts of games where it's not going well. But I wouldn't expect Arsenal 4 points clear with a chance to go 7 points clear, 1-0 up in the game. I mean, they didn't fall apart, let's be clear. They didn't do, but they really did cause their own issues. I mean, the goal, to be fair, sums it up. The pass from Saliba into Zubimendi. Zubimendi, one of the sort of best controlling, composed midfield players in Europe in that position, making a mistake like that. And I wouldn't expect that level of anxiety to come into a team in January. I'd expect it to come maybe in March, when you've got, say, 10, 12 games to go, and people like us are really ramping the pressure up then and say, look, it's yours to lose, and things like that, which will come for this Arsenal team at a certain point. But I wouldn't have expected it 1-0 up against Manchester United, who haven't created much in the game up to that point, in January. I really wouldn't. But they just did wilt. They wilted for 10 minutes before half-time. Manchester United got back into it. They go in at half-time, Manchester United, into a dressing room with Michael Carrick, who I think has gone, look, is that it? They've thrown the best punches at you and they've not done much. And by the way, they look a little bit nervous. Go out and play. And that's what Manchester United did. And I have to say, from an Arsenal perspective, in terms of that's what I think will damage them today. Is not necessarily just the result. The result's painful. But the way in which, when they watch that game back, they've approached it, and the way in which they've handled certain moments in the game. This is an Arsenal team that are really reliable and consistent, very good defensively. They sustain attacks. They don't give teams chances. They don't concede 3. How long? 121 matches since they've conceded 3 at home. So we're not going overboard here by what we've seen. This is 3 seasons. Well, no, hang on. 120 matches home and away.
And away, yeah.
Yeah. So it's 3 seasons of football almost that we've seen where Arsenal have not conceded 3 goals. This is a monumental sort of moment here today where they've completely and utterly... falling apart's not the right terminology, but something's gone badly wrong here for them today. And we'll come on to why in a minute in terms of Manchester United's special goals that they've scored. But the way in which they felt out there on the pitch, and only they will know, but I can imagine that when you just sort of a bit nervous, a bit anxious, and you sort of close up a little bit and you play safe, and you lose that freedom and that expression in what you're doing, and that was that Arsenal team today, and they have to find out very quickly where that comes from and root it out.
Well, on that topic, how would you, if you were Arsenal, use this week? They've got the deadest of dead Champions League rubbers. They've won it, they're far away, they're playing a team that's right at the bottom and out of it. They've got a home game like that, and then they go to Leeds. next week. And how would you use this week?
I think I would concentrate. I mean, Mikel Arteta will probably change the team dramatically in the midweek, but I think he needs to concentrate wholly on going to Leeds next weekend and get a win. Put to bed anything that this is just a blip today. This is just a sort of a one-off. But yeah, concentrate. Well, look, you have to win the game in midweek as well, but they've got enough good players to be able to do that. But Leeds becomes very big for them. What they can't afford to do is go to Leeds and get beat up, and lose there. And all of a sudden they're 1 point, and then all of a sudden there will be questions asked. There will be people saying, oh... I mean, I walked up the stairs today here with Arsenal. I think Patrick Vieira in the studio before the game said now or never. And there was a similar feeling from Arsenal fans walking up. There was 3 blokes that I was talking to, and they were like, "We don't win it this season, we'll never win." It's that type. You feel that. That is not putting pressure on Arsenal. That is how everybody feels. That's a good thing. That's because they feel like you're the best team in the league, and the other teams around are really struggling. So they've got to get over that feeling that maybe everybody sort of, if they're going, don't go paranoid or insecure tonight and thinking that everybody's piling pressure on you. No, everyone's going to be asking the question, because that's the question that will get asked until you go and win a league. And those questions are going to come thick and fast. So get ready for Leeds next Saturday. Make sure your heads are right. Make sure you get back to clean sheets. Go and win the game. Be solid. Do what you do, or else you're going to get more questions. So nip it in the bud. Root it out inside a few days. And don't let that little bit of a sort of don't let that disease that might just enter your dressing room grow, which it can grow if you get a few bad results. The disease of negativity and sort of the questions being asked, are they going to be able to do it? Can they ever do it? Will Mikel Arteta ever win a title? Will his team ever win a title? All that sort of stuff. They've got to get ready for next weekend. The Champions League game in midweek, they've done their job in that already. They need to concentrate on next weekend and make sure they're right for that match, because Ellen Road's a tough place to go.
OK, Manchester United. What's suddenly so right about Manchester United?
I mean, what a remarkable week. I've had an amazing 8 days, actually. Just coming into a game this morning, I did the Sky Sports News interview, coming down with a bit of enthusiasm and optimism that I actually didn't think Manchester United would win today. I didn't. But I thought they would give a good account of themselves, but I thought Arsenal might just be too good for them. I wanted to see the same intent, aggression, compactness that I saw last week out of possession, and I wanted to see, we're never going to see, I think, the same level of football going forward, but glimpses of it and moments that meant that they could actually be competitive. And I thought they'd score, Manchester United. I thought that definitely they would score. I'm absolutely blown away by what I've seen in 8 days, because you can't believe how low and how bad it was a few weeks ago in terms of some of the performances that we've seen. And there are a number of things that have changed. The intensity, the compactness, the aggression of the defending, their willingness to get behind the ball together and be difficult to beat and dig in when you're in difficult moments of the game. And there was more of that today than there was against City. I thought they played better football against City, but they were always going to have to dig in here more. In that first 25 minutes when they didn't have a lot of the ball, they didn't really, to be fair, lose too many chances. There was the one header, I think, from Zubamendi, wasn't there, with the Laman's tip over. But other than that, they controlled the game without the ball. And then they just started to play a little bit. But the big thing for me is that they've got a threat up front. They've got a group of players who are talented up front, who are also getting back and helping their defenders, who are digging in. The wide players are getting back and helping their fullbacks. The fullbacks are getting out aggressively against Saka and against Trossard. The things I said last week, Mainu and Casemiro, it's a tougher game for them today, but they still at times look to play those lovely bits of football. Again, a tougher game for Bruno Fernandes and Mbeumo, but again, moments in the match, they delivered. And what they did today was score some sensational goals. The first one was a really good goal from a mistake from Arsenal by Mbeumo, because it's good composure. But the second two are world-class strikes. They're absolute beauties. And that's what you want a Manchester United team to do, to play with some level of thrill and risk. And they had confidence in the second half. They played. First 5-6 minutes of the second half, 10 minutes of the second half, they came out and popped it about. Really, really good. Michael Carrick's just doing his interview now here. And he'll, honestly, known him a long time, he'll not get too up. And likewise, if they'd lost today, he wouldn't have got too down either. That's just the sort of character that he is. But he's definitely instilled a simplicity to it in the last 2 weeks, in the last 2 games, that I like about it. I like it's my favourite system. We've talked about it a lot. The idea of a talented player playing off a striker, 2 wide players narrowing in midfield, a back 4 that's really aggressive. yeah, I honestly, it's been a huge turn. Still not a point to get carried away. But certainly a point to suggest now that Manchester United have got an unbelievable opportunity from where they were 10 days ago, 2 weeks ago, before the Manchester City game, where it was a real low point. It's a remarkable turnaround, and Michael Carrick deserves enormous credit. So do the players for what they've done. They've responded to whatever's being said to them, and we don't know what's being said to them in that training ground, but they are responding like they weren't before. Why? We'll always speculate. Ruben Amorim could be watching at home thinking, what the hell am I watching from these players right now? I'm sure he's bemused, as we all are, in terms of what the flip. But the magic has returned in the last week. The magic seems to have returned to the club momentarily. The feeling of how to play with the aggression, with the risk, with the great goals, with the attacking of speed, the counter-attack. It feels right. And I think one thing that this last week has told us, no matter where it leads to, is that is the way that Manchester United have to play. Because it's just felt right watching them. Now, that might not lead to Champions League football this season. It might be that they go and get beat by Fulham next week. Who knows what's going to happen? I don't think they will, by the way. I think they'll finish in the Champions League now. But that's why I think a number of players that commentate on Manchester United have been so angry in this last 5 or 6 weeks because of the likes of Everton and Wolves and West Ham and Bournemouth and Burnley and Leeds. 6 teams that have been really struggling, apart from Leeds maybe. And only 5 points were picked up in those games again, out of the 18. And in those games, we were at most of them, Peter. A lot of those games where Manchester United had opportunities to go into the top 4. And we're like, go on. And they didn't. And now they've done it. Because I genuinely believe there is a feeling that they are better than what they've shown. And they've proved it. In these last 2 games, they have really proved that they can get compact, they can stay together, they can be aggressive in their shape, they can spring out of that shape and play good football and counter-attack and hurt teams, and they can score great goals and they can get bodies in the box. That's it. Now, I'm not simplifying football, but there is a simplicity to how United do play football, with width and excitement, and then obviously all of them getting back as quickly as they can together. So I don't want to overcomplicate things, but I've really enjoyed watching them this last 7 or 8 days. I can watch this every day of the week because it's a beautiful form of football. They've been brilliant in everything that they've done, and they've beat 2 very, very good sides, the best 2 sides in the league, and they've beaten them, which means the players now moving forward have got no excuse, as I said last week, to drop below that standard. Don't drop below that standard in 2 ways: performance levels and work ethic. That's it. Perform to your standard and work to your standard. And if you do that, you might not always get the result, but you'll get the actual sort of compassion and empathy from the fans, because the United fans only want to see that, really, that there's an effort and there's an intensity to things. And look, and there's a quality. There is a quality there. And I've really enjoyed it. I think that it's been thrilling to watch these last 2 matches. It really has, and it's a remarkable turnaround.
Does Patrick Dorgu personify it in a way? You mentioned him in the commentary. He's gone from being a nervous left back or left wing back to a sort of thrilling inside left.
Look, I mean, to be fair, I just thought Patrick Dorgu, and I'll be really honest with you, when I watched him at left wing back, I was a bit like that about him. Do you know something? You can't really say anything bad about Patrick Dorgu, because he's a willing runner. He always wanted the ball. He always worked hard under Ruben Amorim. But you thought, what is he? How is he going to get Manchester United back to where they need to be? But then I think actually the first time we saw a glimpse of what Patrick Dorgu could be was actually under Ruben Amorim, when he played him as a wide right. And I can't remember the game now, because I've watched that many games with him over the last... It might have been Newcastle. May have been Newcastle, may have been Bournemouth. One of those 2, I think. Where I thought, oh, playing a bit higher up with a full-back behind him, getting supported, he can play a little bit. He can actually be a good wide player. You know, he can be a good wide player. He can do a bit, and he can sort of cause problems for defence. He can get crosses in. And then you just think, I think then the week after he put him back to wing back, and you thought, oh no. And I think where he's been used now, he's obviously a winger. I mean, today's goal was absolutely brilliant. Jamie Redknapp actually just texted me. I should have seen it during the game. Usually I look at my phone during the game to see if anybody's texted me or something to see, because sometimes you get a text from someone, and he said it was like Yeboah's goal, the one that comes off the bar and just sort of. And he's right. It was a brilliant goal. So Dorgu absolutely does, I think, typify what's happened in this last week. But another player I want to mention actually is Dalot. Look, he gets a really harsh view at times, Dallo, off quite a few United fans. I actually think there's a half-decent fullback in there, me. And I watch fullbacks so closely. I think at times maybe he gets too involved, but I think he's actually good in the air. I think he's got a good athleticism about him. I think he's decent on the ball. I don't think he's a world-class fullback, but neither was I. But I think he does a lot of things. I think if he simplified his game a little bit, fed people, he made a great header at the end against Gabriel where he flicked it on, so he can defend his back post if he wants to. He started to be more aggressive in getting out to players and then getting back in. Used to be a thing that we did when we were actually youth team players at United under Eric Harrison. And Nobby Stiles did it as well. He used to put a rope around our waists. And he did the same with the centre-backs. And then there was 10-metre loops around these ropes. And you used to have to sprint out. And then the others had to sprint across with you, because obviously you're pulling them across with you. And then you had to sprint back in, obviously, if the ball got switched, because then the other left back on the others. And it feels to me like Shaw and Martinez and Maguire and Dallo, they've got that real sort of what would be connection of the 10 yards between them, good spaces. Dallo gets out, he gets out there, he's with Ahmad. They then, if it gets switched and Arsenal do that, they get back in. So I think he's got something about him. I think he's got a 7 out of 10 in him every single week, Dallo. But because we've seen him at left wing back, we've seen him at right wing back, we've seen him exposed so many times. I actually think if he just played right full back and played there all the time, I wouldn't be getting rid of him in a hurry. Now, other people might disagree with me, but I think I know the position of full-back, and I think he can do a decent job for Manchester United. So Dorgu and Dallo, I think, represent where Manchester United were 2, 3, 4 weeks ago in terms of the depths of opinion and the depths of their performances. And now you see them with a little bit of confidence. And the rest of them in midfield, I think, look, Kobbie Mainoo coming back in. I mean, you see, to be fair, he's not at his absolute best today, but what you do see is a player. This idea, we were sort of conditioned to think that he couldn't play with Bruno Fernandes in a team. It was him or Fernandes. I mean, that's wrong. That's wrong. You know, I think that Kobbie Mainoo's demonstrated that he can play in a two in midfield, even with Casemiro. You know, he's getting on a little bit now, Casemiro, but even he looks different in this last couple of weeks. And they play nice little passes with each other. So, look, absolutely delighted with the performances. As a United fan, there should be a vibrancy. I don't know how many there were over in that far corner, 3,000 or 4,000. They stayed in at the end, and rightly so, because they've had some really tough days. But honestly, I think going towards the end of the season, I think there's a real chance that United can now finish in the top 4. Real chance.
So if they do, moving this on now, and assuming the top 3 are the top 3, that means at least one of Chelsea and Liverpool don't make the Champions League.
Yeah.
So deal with that in the context of what you saw of Liverpool, who are now 5 Premier League games without a win, 4 draws in yesterday's defeat. Deal with them.
Yeah, I think Villa will get in there, but I wouldn't say they're an absolute certainty. I wouldn't say they're a certainty as much as City and Arsenal are. So I would say that Villa had a great result today, I think. I've not seen the game, but it's a good result. I watched the Liverpool game last night. And I always think when you win a league title that you have a lot of credit in the bank, and that you... it takes a lot then for it to sort of erode, because you've basically won a league title. It's the toughest thing to do. And Arne Slot's obviously gone and won that title with that group of players last season. I've heard a couple of interviews in the last week from Liverpool people, including the manager, saying that it was always going to be a transition season. No, forget that. I'm not listening to that. No, it wasn't going to be a transition season, by the way. Your 450 million quid you spent in the summer on all those players was the season that you're going to go and win back-to-back titles. Let's not rewrite history and where you were at the start of the season and what everyone was saying, including non-Liverpool people, by the way. So I'm not saying that Liverpool people were getting carried away, or Liverpool fans were getting carried away, but there was definitely a feeling Ekitike, Wirtz, Isak, Frimpong, Kirkes, that wasn't a transition season transfer window. That was adding to a very stable squad of champions, with the likes of Salah and Van Dijk re-signed, with the likes of McAllister and Gravenberch in midfield, with Konate at centre-back, Alisson in net. This wasn't a rebuild, by the way. So I think I've heard transition mentioned a couple of times in this last week. I'm not hearing that at all, because we can't rewrite history on what it was. Yeah, they've looked vulnerable. And I have to say, in this last few weeks, I thought for the first time last night watching them, I thought they looked a little bit soft. And I think Virgil van Dijk is a giant, But even when he gets nudged off the ball at the end off Adley and then he goes and scores, I thought, no, you can't get nudged off the ball. You get him out of the way. And I just thought the first goal when sort of Gomez was off the pitch, wasn't he? Again, it's soft, this idea that you can't defend with 10 men and that ball gets played inside Kirkers that we've seen I don't know how many times this season. There's a softness to them. An absolute softness to them. I thought, that last season we couldn't be any more. We couldn't praise you anymore. And for the first few months of this season, even up to December, I've been hanging back a little bit, thinking, well, look, you can see where they've had injuries, they've had issues, they've lost the directness up top, I think, quite a bit. Obviously, Diogo Jota, God rest his soul, and Diaz, they were very direct players. Quite blunt in what they did. They just would go for defender and not think about it too much. They've become a little bit nice in bits that they do. And that's not them. I thought they were sort of cutting last year. They've lost that sort of sharpness in their attacks. And they've gone soft, I think, in terms of their defending. They're easier to play against. So it's a real problem for them. And that was a bad one for them last night, I think, late on. Brilliant for Bournemouth, by the way. And, the manager there, the celebrations at the end, the players, they'd fought in the end. Liverpool played well in the second half. But, yeah, they've got to sort themselves out because Manchester United have just gone above them. And look, I'm not saying that Manchester United will finish above them. I thought that a week or two ago that they wouldn't do. But maybe I'll be rethinking that. Maybe Liverpool will be rethinking that. Maybe Manchester United's players will be rethinking that. I'm thinking, hang on a minute. They're all struggling here, by the way. Let's not wait for anybody. Because whoever goes ahead and goes on a run, it's going to have a real chance because they're all dropping points. So, look, I think Liverpool, they're going to lose the credits that they built up through winning the league last year if they don't start sort of getting themselves together. And yeah, that softness to them is going to have to change. And look, they've lost out to Gay. They lost Gay. They didn't do that piece of business that they should have done. So maybe that softness will continue. But yeah, it's unlike them, I have to say. I just think that, I won't say they're a whingy bunch on the pitch, but there's a bit of an element of looking at them that thinks like they feel like they're being hard done to a little bit, and they've got to get rid of that attitude if that's what's developing inside.
Let's finish, if we may, with the two teams who are the main event in next week's Super Sunday. We do Spurs-Manchester City next weekend, and Spurs are obviously a kind of big developing story.
Yeah.
What's your read on them?
I was so excited with Thomas Frank going there, thinking that he would instill that directness to them. They would play slightly differently, he plays positive football. I think he's a great guy. I think when we've gone and sort of interviewed him, I used to love going to Brentford, and I think he's a brilliant man to interview. I think he's done a brilliant job at Brentford, and I'm really, really sad that it's not going well for him. But it's happened to a lot of great managers and good managers that have gone there, hasn't it, where they've gone there and they've really struggled. Yeah, I hope he can get through it. That's my main feeling at this moment right now. But it's going to be tough. I can imagine it's getting quite sort of hot under the bonnet for him, and he's going to need to obviously pull some victories together quite quickly. And let's hope that next weekend, that it's a blockbuster game and that Tottenham can give a great account of themselves. So we don't want to see him sacked at Tottenham. That's the last thing we want to see, because I think he's a fantastic manager. He's been good in the Premier League. But it's tough for him right now and it's challenging.
And Manchester City is that game, because there's Champions League before then. Excuse me, nobody was greatly surprised that Man City beat Wolves yesterday, but there was that refereeing issue. I
liked it.
Yeah, go ahead.
I liked it for the confidence, and plus I liked it. I've got this thing, so I hate these sort of what would be modern handballs.
I think if your arms are above your shoulders, can you hear me? I think if your arms on your shoulders, I think it's a penalty. But I think if your arms are here, there. As a defender, I used to be like this all the time. You're adjusting your position, you're getting low. I can't believe that there are penalties being given for this type of thing. And the fact
that the young referee, I'm saying he's young, I don't even know if he is young, but I know he was young in the Premier League terms. I thought that was fantastic. I really did. When I heard that it was his first Premier League game and he's overruled VAR for what I call a nonsense handball. I don't want to see penalties like that given against players in the box. I would have given away 20 penalties a season because of the way I used to play, where you sort of always like that with that level of aggression and that sort of setting yourself and that balance. So it really, really annoys me when I see these. There's one in the World Cup, the last Euros, Was it Denmark went out to like a handball, and I was fuming. I can't remember. Maybe it was Denmark. Was it Denmark, Pete? I don't know. It might not have been Denmark, but there was a handball where there was a ball crossed and it hit a lad, and his arm was here. I thought, what's he going to do if it's as a defender? Someone's going to cross a ball. You're going to cross a ball. I'm bound to do this. I hate it. So for me, turning over these what would be nonsensical handballs, I'm certain they're not penalties. Now, there'll be people, I'm sure, City fans, there'll be others that say, but you wouldn't want it against you, those types of decisions. And if it was a Manchester City defender, I'd hate it just as much. I hate defenders not being able to... Then we see all this nonsense where they put their arms behind their backs when they're defending. Get rid of that as well. I'd rather give a penalty for a defender that's actually got his arms behind his back than one that sticks his arm here and it hits him and it gives a penalty. So I was really happy with that. One, for the fact that I disagree enormously with the principle of that type of decision, but also that the referee had the courage, which must have been difficult for him, going over to that screen, being called over, and he's thinking, this could go one way or the other. I'm sure he's thinking that. I mean, he's obviously confident in himself, which is good. You need to be if you're a referee, because you're going to get enough whacks. You might as well stick up for yourself. He's going to have to really sort of dig in to give that decision, and he did it, and well done to him. I thought it was really good.
Yeah, and just a final word on City. Won yesterday, and after all the gloom for them of the Manchester derby, this result here today, to bring it full circle, they'll be getting excitable again, won't they?
Oh, just a bit. Just a bit. If you're Pep Guardiola tonight, I think you're going... I just said, to be fair, I didn't know how Mikel Arteta would react in the morning. What does he do to reset the players? If you're Pep Guardiola in the morning... Justin, our manager in his day, if something like that happened, he would come in tomorrow morning and he'd go for us. So if Pep Guardiola's going into that dressing room at City tomorrow morning for 5 minutes, and he'll go for them and say, are you really going to let these off the hook? They were nervous. They were anxious. You know what I mean? I think he really, really must be saying to them, come on, do you want this? Because it's there. It's there if you want it. Because they're struggling. And I think you'd prey on it a little bit. So, look, I know Pep Guardiola and Mikel Arteta get on and they're sort of used to work together. But I think if I was City, having lost last week the way I did, I'd be obviously down. But then to see this today, their shoulders will be up there. Their chests will be out. I think tomorrow morning they'll be thinking, right, we're back in this. 4 points. Let's get them into March and April. Let's get on their shoulder. Let's see what they're about. And that's what I'd be saying if I was Pep Guardiola. I'm sure he'll be saying that to his players. Hang in on the shoulder of this team and let's see what they're about.
Bubbling up nicely, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It'd be interesting. That was an interesting game today. I wasn't expecting that. I don't think any Arsenal fan in this stadium was expecting that. Even those United fans in that far corner. That's a big day in the title race. And I think it's a big day for Manchester United and Michael Carrick.